21 years and you stand on a drop. Have a level, yes, we begin you up. The bill come to run this place again. Come now, we cast the vote. All the St. John City East, you know when it's time to go. Vote Lava, vote. Cause you're ready as the best. Vote Lava. You can see the progress. Vote Lava. Got a lot of work to do. Lava can pull us through. We remember Lovell when he was making his way. His friends, family, and all of his community will always be thankful and will never forget the years that he served us. We will always respect. Go Lovell, go. I hear them say, let's vote. You got vote, one vote. Go Lovell, go. You got Campbell's vote. Munga Town, let's vote. Go Lovell, go. The bill come to run this place again. Come now, we cast the vote. All the St. John City East, you know when it's time to go. Vote Lovell, go. Cause you're ready as the best. Vote Lovell. You can see the progress. Vote Lovell. Got a lot of work to do. Lovell can pull us through. Hey, go vote, and when you vote, Lovell can keep this country afloat. Munga Town to Fort Road. All our gamblers, them already know his files, his stats. We want him back. We're sure his facts. He's proven that. His files, his stats. We want him back. We're sure his facts. He's proven that. 21 years and you stand on a drop. Have a level, yes, we begin you up. The bill come to run this place again. Come now, we cast the vote. All the St. John City East, you know when it's time to go. Vote Lovell, vote. Cause you're ready as the best. Vote Lovell. You can see the progress. Vote Lovell. Got a lot of work to do. Lovell can pull us through. Hey, go vote, and when you vote, Lovell can keep this country afloat. Munga Town to Fort Road. All our gamblers, them already know his files, his stats. We want him back. We're sure his facts. He's proven that. His files, his stats. We want him back. We're sure his facts. He's proven that. 21 years and you stand on a drop. Have a level, yes, we begin you up. The bill come to run this place again. Come now, we cast the vote. All the St. John City East, you know when it's time to go. Vote Lovell, vote. Cause you're ready as the best. Vote Lovell. You can see the progress. Vote Lovell. Got a lot of work to do. Lovell can pull us through. The bill come to run this place again. Come now, we cast.
New, refreshing, interactive, and a whole new vibe. It's the new season of the Captain's Corner with Harold Lovell, political leader of the United Progressive Party. A refreshing and interactive program highlighting current issues affecting everyone in Antigua and Barbuda. Join us via social media forums and be a part of the conversation. It's the Captain's Corner, bringing light and truth.
Good evening and welcome to the Captain's Corner. And it's the new season and we're out on the block. This evening we're in the Fort Road community and the captain will be hearing from some members or residents of the community as we look at penal reform and overhauling our prison system and ending the crime situation. So at this time I invite the captain, who is very much engrossed in a worry game, to join us on set. Good night, Harold Lovell.
Good night, good night.
And welcome to Captain's Corner.
Oh, it's a good setting here. Glad to see everybody here tonight.
Good. It's different, and we're going to make it different tonight.
That's right.
Well, we have quite a number of persons on set, and others will be joining us throughout our this segment. And we also want to say a special good evening to the dog in the house, Regal. He is the dog of the house. And they say this is the real dog. So we're happy to be in his or its company this evening. Tonight, as I said, we'll be looking at overhauling our prison system. Many of us might have heard the outcry from our prison officers earlier this week, crying out for help, crying out for attention to be paid to them and to
good evening.
Good
How
evening.
Are you?
Oh, look who has joined us. One of the faces and voices from earlier this week. Welcome.
Good evening.
Okay, even before I introduce the captain fully, could you just tell us your name?
I am Junior Officer Jones of Her Majesty His Majesty's prison, I stand corrected.
Junior Officer Jones. Okay, and you were very much in the news this week as well. So we thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
But before we hear from you, since you are living it, I want to hear some welcome words from the captain, Harold Lovell.
Yes, well, I want to welcome everyone. Welcome Junior Officer Jones, and welcome everyone who is here this evening. I want to say that the whole issue of overhauling the prison system is something that is very, very important to the United Progressive Party. And when our manifesto comes out, we will see some of the plans that we have. But suffice it to say, we will engage on a whole program of prison reform, and this does not just mean a new prison building. It means a whole new way of dealing with the question of incarceration, because we feel that the old way of doing it no longer works. And we're prepared to be trailblazers and leaders within the region as far as a whole new concept is concerned. And of course, how we treat our prison officers and how the prison officers are allowed to work and function and the type of facilities that they're given, all of this is part of prison reform. So I'm so happy that Junior Officer Jones is here, because she will be able to speak to us about some of the real issues that the prison officers are facing and some of the real conditions right there in the prison as it is today.
So maybe we can pitch to you now, Junior Officer Jones. What are some of those issues that you and your colleagues have been highlighting? You can just turn to the camera. Yeah.
We are basically facing unsanitary conditions in the prison in terms of the removal of the garbage and the solid waste as well, which piles up for days, even weeks, and then becomes a health hazard to not only the inmates but the officers as well. We are also facing the lack of functional toilets. We do not have proper functional toilets. We do not have consistent running water. And when you have a tally of over 200 plus inmates using the facilities on a daily basis, this becomes overwhelming to the sanitary system. It becomes overwhelming to the officers, who then have to deal with this issue. And we are basically not receiving the support or the infrastructure to which we need to make the prison be just a basic, simple running organization. They are failing us in that manner. The officers are not given clean drinking water. Officers are working double and triple, sometimes 4 shifts back to back without even being informed that they're left there to work these shifts. We are not being provided a meal when you're working these shifts. And we have no one to really cry to. It's falling on deaf ears. Everybody's making us promises, 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 and nothing is being fulfilled. Nothing is being fulfilled. And I'm saying we are now frustrated. We are overwhelmed with the situation to the stage that we cannot function properly. It's like 20 inmates to 1 officer at this moment. The prison is grossly understaffed, and the little staff that we do have cannot manage. We cannot manage with the tools that we are given. We are not given tools to protect ourselves. We are not given communication equipment. We have no functioning phones in the prison. Only 1 phone that works, and that's the phone of the gate lodge. So all the divisions are left on deaf ears. We need somebody to address these issues. These issues have been piling up and piling up and piling up, and they're saying that we are out there and it's political. It is not political. It's just good governance and what the labor code states, that workers should have the basic of a clean and safe working environment. And that is all that we are asking for.
And we just want to say that we do not intend to politicize this issue in any way, but you want to have your concerns heard.
Correct.
And we're offering you that platform. But I'll ask, what is the staff morale at this time?
It is depleted. The staff morale is at 0 at this point in time. The officers do not have a ear to talk to. We have no one that will take our cries seriously. The officers do not want to go to work because of the conditions in the prison, the garbage. It's there. We have rats, we have roaches, we have bed bugs. It's gross. It's gross to work in there. And you have female officers who work inside of the main yard with the gentlemen, and we have no functioning bathrooms to use. If we want to relieve ourselves, we have to go to the recreation ground. Now the recreation ground has locked their toilet facilities, so we're left to the elements. This cannot be right.
Mr. Lovell, your thoughts on what you just heard?
Well, I am really, really appalled to listen to Officer Jones, because it's a story that we hear in so many other government departments. You listen to the workers at Fines, they have their problems. You listen to the workers at Clearview, they have their problems. Almost every single government department are faced with these problems. And we will address these matters as a matter of urgency. And that's why I'm glad that we have an officer who's here just to give us the facts in terms of what is happening. And we can look at that situation and we know that it can be better and it will be better under new administration. But the question also of the condition of the inmates,
Yes.
I think that is also very important. And we need to really begin to recognize that when somebody goes to prison, you take away their liberty, but you're not to take away their dignity. And the way prisoners are treated, it's as though they try to make them feel as though they're less than human in the inhumane conditions. And the fact that we had an English prisoner, where the British government said that our conditions were not fit for human habitation. And so this administration had to make an agreement with the British government that their citizen would not be placed under those conditions. So it is really very unfair and completely inhuman that we should have our brothers and sisters, our men and women, our boys and girls in those conditions. So we must fix it. And that's a commitment that I give, that we will fix it.
I know that those in the audience would like to pose some questions, whether to you or to the junior officer as well. But prison reform is one of the things that the United Progressive Party spoke to. What would prison reform look like under a UPP administration?
Under UPP administration, not only would we address the physical conditions and even the way the prison is run, but as I've said, we would also look to alternative sentencing. One of the first things that we're going to do is to introduce alternative forms of sentencing, so less people will go to prison. We have to look at community service, we have to look at curfews, we have to look at monitoring the way it is done through ankle bracelets and this sort of thing. We find ways that people can be punished, but who do not have to undergo the sort of inhuman conditions or even go to prison to add to the overcrowding. So we intend to reduce the prison population by introducing alternative forms of sentencing. The second thing would be that we have a new concept as far as the prison is concerned, where we want to make the prison self-supporting. We believe that the prison can become a place where you can engage in forms of production of goods, of craft. Some places in the world, prisoners make number plates. Other places, they do different things, whether it be in agriculture or what. But we will have a training facility which will allow persons to be trained, and ultimately persons will be able to become entrepreneurs when they leave the prison because of the exposure that we will give. But whilst in the prison, it is our intention to create the type of conditions where the prison can support itself by selling goods that they create in the prison, and the prison can become a self-supporting entity or institution.
Junior officer, okay, I see Letha has a hand up, but Officer Jones, I'm coming back to you. Yes, Letha.
What will the United Progressive Party do to keep the youth from going to prison?
Very good question. Well, we feel that a lot of the people who end up in prison, they end up in prison because they either have no jobs or have no motivation or they find that it is easier to maybe break the law than to engage in productive activity. So a strong educational program will be there so that we encourage our young people into fruitful and beneficial activities, and also to get opportunities for young people like our YES program, the Young Entrepreneurs Setup. And as I said, for those who actually do break the law, that we will have alternative forms of sentencing so that, yes, less young people will end up actually going to prison, because we would be engaging in other forms of sentencing apart from imprisonment.
Okay, if I can just go to Junior Officer Jones. While the political leader was speaking, I see you nodding in agreement to quite a lot of what he has said. What's your reaction to what you heard just now?
I am in total agreement with Mr. Lovell in the sense that the youths need something to keep them out of prison. It's sad to say that we have persons who come to prison as young as the ages 14. Prison is not a place for them because they come into the prison and they mix with other hardened inmates and they leave with a lesser value of themselves. I think that, like he said, a better system of sentencing them would be a better alternative than to have 14-year-olds sitting in prison with murderers and rapists and these kind of people. Also, with the young people, like you say, I think it starts, as you say, with the education system, Mr. Lovell. Once we educate our children from the school stage, they understand what society expects of them. They become good citizens. They become productive citizens. It is a minority that tend to take up criminal activities. And those who do, let us not put them into the prison system and damage them any further, but let us put some programs in place to let them know that we are still there for them. We have not condemned them, and they are useful to society.
Okay.
I think I also want to add that we are committed to building a modern youth detention center. And this youth detention center would focus on those aspects that Officer Jones spoke about. A lot of education, a lot of training, getting involved in activities that are useful, because the whole idea at the end of their stay in the youth detention center is that we produce productive citizens and we end the practice of mixing young people with hardened criminals, where they basically go to a university of crime and come out with flying colors, meaning that they become a menace to society.
Okay, all right. We have a question or a comment here. Yeah?
Yes, Mr. Lovell, I know this question of prison reform has been a very personal thing for you over the years. And are you and the UPP government, will you be prepared to go the full whack as far as making sure that young people get the full benefit of that reform that you're talking about with the new administration?
Definitely. We will engage in intensive education in prison. That is something that is going to be very, very important, so that the educational development of the young people within the prison system will be a main focus in the prison. We must get the curriculum, the CXC curriculum going, and even other subjects where prisoners can do not only the CXCs, but the CAPE. And we would want to bring a link with the University of the West Indies. We know something has already started, but we would want to extend that so that those prisoners who have the aptitude for it, we would be looking to bring them into a program where those who have the capacity will get degrees coming out of prison. So the whole idea is to completely reform what the prison experience is like, because the ultimate end game of prison is so that you produce useful members of society after the period spent in prison.
Wadada, you wanted to come in?
Well, first, the name is Ira Wadada. I've been a victim of the prison system myself, because I was charged for murder in 2018. Spent 80 days in maximum security in very appalling conditions. sleep on the floor for those 80 days. With a little blanket and a piece of sponge, and that's it. Toilet is right there, a bucket. If you miss the hour to empty the bucket, that stays there with you until the next day. I think it needs an upgrade in that respect. Serious upgrade. Because a lot of people in prison are innocent. Because of flawed investigation by the police, them have it in there. In my case, I got a no-case submission after 80 days in lockdown.
Wow.
23 hours a day. 1 hour for bathing, you're back in cage again. To me, that's like primitive prison. There's nothing good about it, no reform, no nothing positive. Right? And it needs urgent attention. I was there with a 14-year-old in maximum.
In the same cell? In the
Next
same,
door.
yeah.
In the same
Wing,
maximum.
yeah.
When I came out weeks later, they found his body at Devil's Bridge. Go in there and he just get hard and he get worse. When he should have been in a juvenile detention center.
Yeah.
The UPP, it needs urgent attention. The police is one of the factors we have to be looking. Because a lot of corruption. We can go on and on. You know, I'm not afraid to talk. I'm born here. I've been living in this community here for 50 years. A lot of hills. You know, there's a whole lot of work to be done. And we appeal to the relevant authorities and the future authorities. Y'all have to take this thing very serious, because it's serious. You know, we normally speak out in public, but me not really care. Because they done try to spoil my whole life by having me in there, and even the politicians and them say me do something that me do. And I get an okay submission, so you must understand. They didn't have nothing on me.
Right.
You
Okay.
know? So
Alright.
definitely, just like the white boy that up at maybe base or Panama base or wherever that be. How come he up there and the Antiguans and them have to go through them inhumane conditions there? I just don't understand that policy.
Okay, so thank you very much for that, you know, that personal experience. But Mr. Lover, you listened to Wadada. He lived it as an inmate for 80 days, he said. We're also hearing from Junior Officer Jones, who is living it as an employee. What is your takeaway from all this discussion?
The real takeaway here is that we have not kept up with the changing times. And this is an issue that must be addressed as a matter of urgency, because it's really a human rights issue. And the way that our people are being treated, it's a violation of their human rights. And we feel that without casting blame one way or another, we have to accept this as a national problem. This is a national problem that requires a national solution. And as a new administration, we intend to take this issue, to get the right people to advise us in terms of how best to restructure what we have and to go about it in a very systematic way. We need a completely new structure, and we say that we would build a new modern facility. But we also need to run it in a modern way. There's no point a new facility using the same old rules and the same old methods of oppressing and suppressing people. We have to see it as an opportunity to reform, an opportunity to rebuild, an opportunity to rehabilitate, rather than an opportunity to suppress and oppress and repress. I think if we approach it with that mindset, everything will fall into place. And as far as the officers are concerned, that comes down to basic respect. As I indicated, it's not coincidental that workers in other facilities, for example, the Fines Institute, the Clearview, and other government departments, that they all are facing these terrible working conditions. So the whole question of respect for government employees and ensuring that government employees are treated with the dignity that deserve, that is a change that I can assure everyone will take place under a new administration. So from the point of view of the inmates, it will be a big change. And from the point of view of the staff who work there, likewise, it will be a very big change, a meaningful change.
I want to go back to Junior Officer Jones. In your outing this week, your protest actions, one of the things you said is that you wanted to have an audience with the Prime Minister. You said, you know, you've bypassed the Attorney General because you think you've gone past that.
Yeah.
If you were to have a meeting with the Prime Minister tomorrow, what would your concerns be? What would you say to him?
I would say to Mr. Gaston Brown that the prison is in dire need of assistance. We need clean facilities to work in. The inmates need a clean environment to work in. Their voice also needs to be heard. They were sent to the prison as punishment taken away from society and their loved ones. But their rights, their basic human rights, are being neglected in the prison, Mr. Brown. The officers are being abused and misused, overworked, and underappreciated. Our morale is broken. We need just the basics to function, and we are not getting that, Mr. Brown. We have been to Mr. Benjamin time and time again, and we've been given nothing but promises that have not bear fruit. So now we are asking you, sir, as head of the government, to come and take a stand. Come into the prison, see the conditions of the prison, see where the magistrate and the judges are sending these people to spend a sentence of a minimum of 6 months to as a maximum of 40, 45 years. Every time an inmate gets sentenced, we, the officers, are sentenced with them. They need to have a voice. They're asking for bare minimum. Clean toilets, clean drinking water, and a clean facility. Also, Mr. Prime Minister, you need to find a way to deal with the overcrowding in the prison. This in itself is creating health hazards, physical, mental, and psychological abuse on some inmates. You have persons who are on remand for as much as 8 years, waiting to face their day in court to get some form of justice. They need help. Some of them cannot afford a lawyer. They need help. These people need help, and I think it is your duty as the Prime Minister of this country and the ruling government that you take this matter very seriously. Very, very seriously, because it has been festering, and that is why we have now overboiled out into the streets so that the public can understand what we are going through. We need your help. We need help.
If, Mr. Lovell, the election were to be held in a matter of days and the UPP takes over, would this be a matter of priority for UPP administration? And if so, how?
This is a matter of priority. Obviously, there has to be a short-term approach, a medium-term approach, and a long-term approach. The long-term approach would include the construction of a new facility. That cannot be done within the first 100 days. The medium term would include the introduction of more educational opportunities and changing the way in which the prison sentencing system works, whereby we would be able to introduce the alternative sentencing, which will have to go through Parliament. But in the immediate and short term, we would address the crying needs of the officers and address the overcrowding by doing a review of all those who have been sentenced and seeing where we would be able to address the issues of reduced sentencing in order to deal with the question of overcrowding. So I would say in the very short and immediate term, the working conditions would have to be addressed, because that is not something that will take very long. That just requires the will to do so. As far as the overcrowding is concerned, we'd have to see how best to thin the population out whilst as quickly as possible introducing alternative sentencing so that we send less people to prison and we review those that are there for minor and petty offenses and see how we can shorten their sentences in order to make the problem less severe.
Okay. I think we had another question
Junior
here.
Officer Jones,
Yes, sir.
is there any thoughts of victimization as a result of the stand that you're taking now from you and your colleagues at the present time?
Yes, we are facing a great deal of victimization. We had an officer who came out on the first day to take stand who is also pregnant. She was refused to give a pass because one officer already took a pass. We had to take a pass to come out of the prison to take up industrial action, which should not be. The Labor Code of Antigua and Barbuda speaks against this.
Explain that for us.
Once the officers leave the compound, we have to get what is called a gate pass, which states your name, where you're going, and what time you've left the compound.
Okay.
You have to get that to leave the compound. So one officer already got it.
Is this a regular occurrence for every pass?
Not for everyone. Not for everyone.
When is it demanded?
It's demanded of persons who are, as you say, not in the gang. Okay?
So it's not a regular
It's
pass?
not a regular practice for some, but for others. The pregnant officer decided that she's going to take industrial action, and they opened the gate for the vehicle to come out, and she came out with the vehicle. Once we finished our industrial action and she was returning back to duty, she was told by the gatekeeper that the superintendent says that she's not allowed back on the compound. I instructed her to go home, to come back and take up duty tomorrow at 6 o'clock. When she arrived at 6 o'clock the following day, which was Tuesday, she was again denied access into the prison because she took up process outside, taking industrial action against the ills that are going on in the prison. And this is a pregnant officer.
Are the prison officers unionized?
The non-established officers, yes. We have the Antigua Trades and Labor Union, which governs non-established government officers, government personnel. But to be frank with you, Ms. Nicholas, they have failed us. Mr. George have failed us. The PS is failing us. The minister has abandoned us. We have no help. This is why we're outside on the sidewalk crying out. A lot of the officers would like to come out and protest, but some of them are foreigners. And Mr. Lovell will take act to this. They are foreigners, sir, and they're threatened. Their jobs are threatened if they go on the line to take industrial action with what is going on in the prison. That cannot be right.
Mr. Lovell, workers being denied the right to protest.
Well, again, that is completely against the Antigua and Barbuda Labor Code. It's completely against all the conventions that we know, because there's always a right to protest and there's a procedure. So I would expect that whatever procedure is there would be followed, but the right to protest cannot be taken away. And so I don't know what the Antigua Trades and Labor Union would say, but they need to, based on what we've heard, it seems to me as though they need to be more engaged, but it is not for me to get into that. I would just say that we need to get a change in administration, so that we can fix these problems without this type of hassle that the officers have to go through. They should not have to be fighting for this. These are rights as workers that they should enjoy. So the solution to this is not necessarily union action. The solution to this is, as we would say, you have to get rid of them. And once you do that, then we're going to be on the road to fixing the problem. And that's going to be the real lasting solution for the short term, the medium term, and the long term.
Well, Captain, I think it's time for us to head back to the studio to continue tonight's episode. But first, I just want to say thank you to those who joined us on set and the others who are looking on and wanted to ask a question. We'll probably have to do another part to this, a follow-up to this. But we're going to go back to studio where we're going to field questions from you, our listeners and our viewers, right after this break.
But I would also like to say thank you. I would also like to thank Officer Jones. I would like to thank Wadada, who is one of the patriarchs of this community.
Okay.
When you talk about Fort Road and Upper Fort Road, you have to talk about Wadada. He was here when you only had 10 and 12 people living here. And of course, right. And of course, Brother Cordley, we want to thank him as well, who is also living in this community and knows the suffering of the people in this community. And to all others, I just want to say thank you very much. And of course to our host, Charity, for allowing us to use his facility. I just want to say this is an issue that affects many young persons in this constituency and this community, and as well as some persons who are middle and up in age. It is a major problem. It affects mainly poor people in Antigua, and we need to fix it because it's an abuse of the rights of those who do not have a voice, and we have to be the voice for the voiceless, and we have to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves.
And what's better way to end this segment, just to say that we'll be right back after the break. For those of you on Facebook, remember to share the live, and for those of you joining us via Observer Radio at Progressive 107.3 FM, we thank you for being with us, and we'll be right back right after the break.
Pardon?
Where's Poppy? He left. Okay.
Yeah.
Cooperative Credit Union Limited. We offer savings accounts, deposits, fixed deposits, loans, among other related services. You can even become a shareholder by purchasing a minimum of 50 shares at $5 per share. Membership is super easy and convenient. Just visit our newly opened credit union building on Upper Newgate Street, Monday to Fridays, 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. with proof of ID and address, along with $15 to cover registration and passbook. And you'll be set and on your way. For further information, call 462-8888 or 727-2285. People's Cooperative Credit Union Limited. Today, tomorrow, together.
And we say welcome back to the Captain's Corner. We are back in studio. Yes, we were out in the community, but now we are back, and we want to say thank you so very much for staying tuned. Of course, to our listeners on Observer Radio, on Progressive 107.3 FM, and also to those of you on Facebook and those listening also or watching via YouTube. Quite a riveting conversation we had there, especially with the, hearing the experiences of those who would have gone through the system and what, what they would have experienced. Mr. Lovell, looking back, listening back.
Mm-hmm. No, it certainly is a very important discussion, and we believe that this issue must be given the status of priority, a priority issue for any new administration. As I indicated, there are many persons from the community who have suffered as a result of the antiquated system that we have. And any real meaningful discussion about transformation in Antigua and Barbuda must be a discussion that includes the question of penal reform, making the journey to prison one that is less frequent for persons who may in some way cross the line and transgress the law. So we believe that it is a matter that must be addressed. And those appalling and terrible conditions of the prison officers, certainly that is something that we must jump on at the earliest opportunity once there's a change in administration. We believe that the officers as well as the inmates must be treated with respect, and it certainly will be a case of a new dispensation and a new way of doing things as far as the prison is concerned.
Okay. And we have some questions that persons would have asked. And we want to say a very special welcome. Look who have joined us, Brother Sherfield Boyne. Good evening and welcome to the Captain's Corner.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so we're now 3 in the house tonight. Happy to have you. You would have listened to the discussion that we had earlier. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, very interesting discussion. The prison actually needs reform. It needs reformation not only in the infrastructure, but also in the development of the prisons. It has a need for a lot of training and a lot of development for persons who find themselves in prison for a life of contribution to society after the prison service.
Okay. One of the questions that came in quite early was whether UPP administration would use the Navy base as a prison. I guess that is for you.
Yes. That's a difficult one to give a firm commitment on as far as the use of the Navy base is concerned. Certainly, the conditions need to be greatly improved. But for me, and I think the party has seen that facility as one that we would want to set aside for educational purposes. But the commitment that we give is that a new facility will be constructed so that those persons who find themselves in prison will find themselves in circumstances where their conditions will not be inhumane conditions. They will be conditions that are fit for the modern period, and we will aim to have persons in prison rehabilitated, reformed. When they come out of prison, they will be persons who can make a decent contribution to society. That's the different mindset that we will bring, and we understand the urgency of addressing the conditions. But rather than using a stick and plaster approach, we believe that we should do a complete overhaul of the system, including a new facility, which I give a commitment to in terms of building a facility fit for purpose.
On the Facebook feed, there have been quite a number of reaction to that, and one of the things they're saying is the whole issue of community service and the need for us to stress community service, I guess, as an alternative. I'd love to hear from both of you. Yeah, Sherfield?
Yes, one of the problems that a judge or magistrate will face after a person would have been convicted of an offense is what does the law provide as a sentence? There are many times that the judge or magistrate might be minded not to send a person to prison, but they have very little alternative sentencing procedure mechanism in the law. So I think that having considered that, we enact alternative sentencing in terms of community service, in terms of helping to do something in the community, to the older people, whatever, to bring that prisoner, that wrongdoer, to understand what he has done and to pay back in some way rather than a prison sentence. So alternative sentencing is needed. Legislation is needed for that.
Okay. Another question that came in via Facebook, this is WhatsApp. What are your plans for using technology to help supervise offenders? I think you had made mention of bracelets and that sort of thing.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we know, that there are countries where you do monitoring, and so effectively persons are housed at home whilst undergoing a penal punishment. we feel that this is something that will help to reduce the number of persons who actually have to be in prison, whilst you restrict their movements and you monitor them in a way to make sure that they do not reoffend. So these are areas that are ripe for discussion, and we would get the right people in place who would be able to use modern techniques and modern technology in order to make sure that Antigua and Barbuda comes out of the dark ages and into a modern era of penal reform.
Okay, there's a question, it's a two-part question. The first one, are there any plans to introduce a parole system for prisoners? And the person also wants to know whether or not the name of the prison can be changed from His Majesty's Prison.
Well, okay. Yes, as far as the first question is concerned, let's get that question up again.
The parole system.
Right, the parole system. Yes, of course. We need to, again, part of the overhaul of the prison system must include the parole system. I'm going to listen to Sherfield on that because I know he has seen the way it works in the United States and will probably be able to add his voice in terms of that experience. But there's also the issue of His Majesty's prisoners, they're calling it. Well, we continue to be a monarchy, and to the extent that we practice that system of government, then the norm is to call it His Majesty or Her Majesty's Prison. But certainly we are moving, hopefully, to a position where eventually it will be referred to either as the National Prison of Antigua and Barbuda, or a term which does not include the concept of monarchy, but rather embraces the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. So whatever term is used, I welcome, and I hope within my lifetime we will stop using the term His Majesty's Prison, and we probably have the National Penitentiary or the National Prison, or whatever term we use, but it would be one that would make reference to the nation rather than to the monarchy.
Sherfield?
Yes, with respect to parole, parole is very important, especially for long-term prisoners. You have a prison system where prisoners are graded and given different point system in terms of their rehabilitation and their behavior. So you have some prisoners who, having been convicted and very early in their prison life, reform themselves and are more or less ready to go back into society. But without a system of an exit prior to your release date, there's nothing that can be done. With a parole system, such a person can go before a parole board and demonstrate how they have reformed themselves, how they have rehabilitated, and their points and system can be used to say and to come to a decision that the person can be paroled back into the community for the rest of their prison term. And during that time, if they were to reoffend, they will have to come back to serve their original sentence plus the sentence for the reoffending.
Okay. Can I see that question about Christian Valley? Yes, there's a question coming in from Facebook. Christian Valley is in a deplorable state. Couldn't prisoners be deployed to help tend in agricultural stations?
Definitely.
Who will take that?
Definitely. Yeah. And it's part of the whole program that we've been talking about, getting a new mindset for prisoners. We look to the future where a prison will be a self-sustaining institution. It will be an institution that literally pays for itself. There are prisons around the world where prisoners engage in forms of production that allow them to make money for themselves and for the prison. We have to get really tuned into the concept of rehabilitation and reform and new opportunities for persons who go to prison, so that when you come out, not only will you be looking at just having a skill, but you'll be looking also at being able to fit that skill into some form of business operation or business enterprise by helping persons who have gone through the prison system to become productive members of society, but not only productive, but persons who can earn a good living by virtue of the experiences they've had, the training that they've been exposed to, and the reform that has taken place in their character. But I believe Sheffield is somebody, again, who has some knowledge in this area, so I'd want to hear his views on this as well.
Right, I totally agree with what you're saying. There are many prisoners who would have learned very important skills in prison. I remember back in the 90s, I represented a prisoner in a deportation proceedings in New York. And that prisoner, while he was in prison, he learned a skill to make molds. Now, mold is something that you make in mass producing any item. If you want to, let's say, make that water bottle, you first make a mold for the water bottle and then produce the water bottle. So that guy learned that skill in prison, and when he came out during the deportation proceedings, he was working as a mold builder. So when we presented his tax return to the judge, I remember the judge commented, the man make almost twice as much money as the judge. And it helped his earning power and the skill and the importance, because a lot of businesses write reference for him about the importance that he gave to their business. And it helps us in that case. So you can learn a lot of skill. You can turn your life around from serving time in prison and getting a skill. So definitely we should be interested in teaching skills and building skills and life skills and production skills. All of this can be utilized for the time that you have in prison.
Okay, our time is quickly going, so we're going to wrap the discussion on this whole prison and prison reform. I'll just entertain any final thoughts that you might want to share. I'll start with you, Sherfield, on this whole prison reform and our way going forward, and then we'll move to our next topic.
Right, I once read that the way to judge a community is to take a look at its lowest citizens. That is the measure of the community, how the state treats its lowest citizens. I think it's time for us to take a look at the prisoners, take a look at the prison facility, take a look at that 1735 concept and totally bring that into the 21st century, develop the prison, make it a modern place, make it a place for rehabilitation. You go there to learn how to integrate yourself into community. And that's what I think we ought to be doing and focus on.
I'll just say ditto. I agree.
Nothing further.
I think Brother Sherfield has put it very well, and there's no need to add anything to what has been said.
Okay. I'd just like to remind our listeners in particular, if you'd like to send your questions, your comments to us, you can go to our website, www.voteupp.com, or on our Facebook page, MyUPP on Facebook, or if you want to go to YouTube, it's United Progressive Party Antigua. That's where you'll find us on YouTube. Or if you want to send us a WhatsApp, the number is 268-789-10.
I was born in Antigua, but went to school in the U.S. My mom was a security guard at Public Works for years. My dad burnt coal out in New Winthrops, near Lamberts. And my grandmother was a teacher at Green Bay School. I've had to return home to help them because the ABLP government won't pay their pensions and Social Security on time. This ABLP government doesn't see the effects of the cost of living on senior citizens in this country. Well, my folks have a voice, and they have made their choice. the United Progressive Party is the right choice for their future and their legacy.
And we say welcome back to the Captain's Corner. Just to remind you of our various contacts, our website www.voteupp.com. On Facebook, you'll find us at MyUPP. On YouTube, we are United Progressive Party Antigua. And then on WhatsApp, we are 268-789-1073. That's 73. 1073. All right, so there's been lots of talk recently and even earlier about the whole issue of NAMCO, whether or not NAMCO is necessary, the funds used by NAMCO, why was NAMCO set up? And we're going to have a discussion tonight that we hope that you will learn and also that you can participate in the discussion. And I think a good starting point for us to be is, for those who don't know, let us talk about NAMCO. Sherfield, we'll start with you. What is this NAMCO that we're talking about, and what was the stated intention?
Okay. NAMCO is a private company set up under the Companies Act. It's the National Asset Management Company. And it is formed for purposes of holding assets. And later it was added as a purpose to manage these assets. The company has directors, mostly government ministers. The chairman is Sir Robin Yearwood. You have various ministers and Mr. Martin Commercial, who I think is the Solicitor General. Those are the directors of the company. So these assets are said to be government assets, and they are taken out of the government system. The onset government system, I mean the consolidated funds and even a statutory corporation, and placed into this company for management. I think the reason is to sidestep all the control that the government system entails.
Okay, Level?
That's the whole point, and that's where we're very worried, because the way in which NAMCO operates, it seems as though it was created with a statutory body. The statutory bodies that we know, they are subject to greater controls by virtue of the fact that they are created by statute. A private limit funds, and that can be done with the board of directors simply doing it, whereas with a statutory body, you would normally have to come to Parliament if you're going to change the very structure of the company. Now, we question, why do we have NAMCO in the first place? I mean, even if we take the argument that the government ministers put at its highest, for example, and the strategic importance of NAMCO is that by holding these assets, and there was a recent asset, so we're saying this company, this government company that's creaming off the government shares